by the blood of our people are your lands kept safe.
I see in your eyes the same fear that will take the heart of me.
So do all who live to see such times.
By all that you hold dear, this good earth.
There's some good in this world, and it's worth fighting.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we are talking about a little bit of a controversial topic, which is Galadriel, especially her character as portrayed in the films by Peter Jackson, and then this newest show by Amazon. And we see quite a different character. And this article wants to put forward the idea that the Rings of Power's Galadriel was more accurate, at least a more accurate portrayal than the movies in terms of being true to Peter Jackson's work. And this one's definitely going to get people chomping at the bit to talk about this. So I know that everyone is frustrated with Galadriel, seeing as she's kind of the cause for everything that's happened. However, you know, what we see in Galadriel from the original trilogy and to an extent The Hobbit, although that was clearly just Peter Jackson's fan fiction, we do see a different character than the show, but the show is showcasing her as she grows into who she will eventually become in the movies. And there's no books by Tolkien that just focus on Galadriel, so it's really hard to get inside the mind of a character when I wouldn't call her a background character, but she's definitely not the focus, and you could almost leave her out of the movies, at least for like a casual fan, and they wouldn't even notice, right? Like if you just literally skip that scene, I don't know how many casual people watch the movies would even know something's missing. So for that reason, I do think we don't really get enough inside her head from Tolkien, and so we do have to kind of come up with, how someone like this might feel in certain situations, especially in the situation we find ourselves in the Rings of Power, versus when she's basically got her own little realm to rule over, and there's relative peace in that time period. So what are your thoughts on this? Like you've been a lot more favorable to the Rings of Power than I have. But at the same time, you also joke with me about some of her decision making, and the fact that she has been mutinied on, and she is definitely not one to follow orders just because the king commands it. She takes matters into her own hands quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm just reading the article here, and it says, it would be easy to argue that Rings of Power Galadriel is more accurate representation of Tolkien's character than the movies, because she certainly did go through this period of anger at the world, rebelling against the powers that be, and challenges in finding her feet in a world full of greater beings who believe they knew better. History of Middle-earth denotes that how the War of Wrath changed many things, and talks about how thereafter Galadriel had no peace within, for in that testing time amid the strife of Noldor, she was drawn this way, and that she was proud, strong, and self-willed, as were all the descendants of Finwë save Finarfin, and like her brother Finrod, of all her kin the nearest to her heart. She had dreams of far lands and dominions that might be her own to order as she would without tutelage.
Yeah, so it does sound like she had some desire to rule. This brings up I think we talked about this early on in the show, how we're confused about elven hierarchy, because there really is no way to climb the ladder, and since everyone's immortal, there's no like passing on any sort of ownership of titles, and so someone in Galadriel's position, it's not clear exactly how she would climb the ladder, so to speak, and have more of a command. Although in the show, she is given command of the northern armies, which is something that is I believe is not true from Tolkien's work. So the show does kind of give her some additional duties, but it does sound like Tolkien did have this idea of a character that wanted to have some sort of rule over their own realm, which is an interesting idea, and it kind of makes sense thinking back why the two elven realms that we go to in the original trilogy, why they don't seem to be that in tune with each other and in touch with each other. So it sounds like she's kind of on her own and likes it that way, and I guess the people the elves that she's got around her, they prefer to be kind of secluded the way she is. It does definitely paint a different picture than what we encounter when we first meet up with her with the Fellowship, and that's for a lot of people that is going to be their first meeting of Galadriel. And you know, there's something like I've talked about this before, but she almost reminds me of a Gandalf replacement at that point, because Gandalf has just died, and she seems very mystical and almost like a wizard. And so, you know, seeing that, it's not clear from that image what she's gone through. And so now we're sort of seeing it, and it's just, I get that she's going to have a lot of darkness potentially from the wars, and she clearly in the show has unfinished business, she feels, with killing orcs. But I'm still kind of confused how the elven societies work, because can anyone just make their own? Can anyone just run off and make their own realm for the elves? You know what I mean? So that's the one part that still kind of is strange for me. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, I do think that we can't just have a show that follows around normal Galadriel either. As much as I did like the idea of having a similar show that would have a very similar feel to the original trilogy, and then have maybe Galadriel be the Gandalf of the group or something like that. I've come to realize that I think having her be different, and same as Elrond, I think those two characters are the ones that I'm most drawn to, simply because I know them from the original trilogy, and they're very different from what we get. Elrond, I guess, is starting to grow. We can kind of start to see him grow into a bit of a ruler, just in how he's able to mend these divides with the dwarves and with his own people in terms of getting them to work together. Galadriel, we're still not there yet. We're still a long ways off for her. So I will say I do think in hindsight that I agree with the idea of making them different from what we've seen. And it turns out that at least in some aspects, she does seem to have a drive to her that is not obvious from what we see in the original trilogy. So maybe this article has something going for it. I'm curious to hear what our audience has to say, because I know this is going to be a point of contention. Although I will point out, I don't think that it's the fact that Galadriel is as harsh as she comes across in this show. I do think a lot of it has to do with her decision making as well, and that's not something that we get from Tolkien here, but just in terms of how she acts around her fellow kin. It's borderline abusive at times, and she is. While I agree that with the words here that Tolkien probably had her be a little rebellious, she outright refuses to even talk with people. She just straight up does whatever she wants. And I think it's that aspect where, if she was at least a little bit more likable, we could get on board with her rebellious side, but because she's not only rebellious but like just mean and somewhat cruel, and we have these hints of this very cruel nature of her when she's talking about orcs. It's really hard to get behind this character. Like it's making it really difficult for me to root for her at times. And I think ultimately that's because of how her character is deciding to do, like the action she's deciding to do. So you know,
she's harsh. Do you think she's harsh to Frodo in the movies too? Like telling him, well, to be ring power is to be alone and stuff like that. Just very matter of fact.
There's, I suppose so. There's
like maybe she hasn't changed. Maybe she is the same. Just
I literally watched Fellowship the other night, and when it got to that scene, I'm just watching it, like trying to figure out, like, does she want to get the ring in this moment, and like, is she like, obviously she has a moment, right, where she kind of wants it, but she immediately comes down from that psychotic high. I can see in that moment elements from this show, so I can kind of see what they're going for. However, I don't think she was harsh to Frodo. I think it was a little bit poetic, and it's kind of a way in which she's almost warning him, although it's a little too late to warn Frodo. I mean, I think Gandalf probably should have warned Frodo a bit better. But you know, is it harshness, or is it a seclusion that has made her she's not a very good people person? Like, she flat out like brings Boromir to tears. Like if you're gonna talk about harshness, she's making Boromir cry. Okay, she's like, okay, the humans are screwed. Your whole family's gonna die. Now go take a nap. So she's definitely got harshness to her.
And she's basically saying, well, okay, with Gandalf gone, you guys are basically screwed.
Yeah, and I ain't going with you because that's my ex-boyfriend over there. So, you know, I can see elements of it, but at the end of the day, there's there is a sanity to the character. Now, obviously, this is many years later, but there's just a sanity and a competency to how Galadriel conducts herself. I when I watch the Rings of Power, I literally don't know what Galadriel's gonna do, because she straight up does whatever she wants, and then like has no regret even when she's wrong. Now they do try to spin it a little bit when she's when like after the volcano erupts, and she's kind of got some regret to her decisions, but I don't really buy it too much yet. You know, there's not really any reason for her to regret them in those moments. Yet, meanwhile, she straight up like brings Sauron places, and instead of like having like a moment of regret, she just like kind of lie. Like, you've pointed this out, she kind of lies and is like, "Oh yeah, don't do business with Halbrand anymore. He's not."
Yeah, they don't say, she doesn't tell anyone that.
Yeah. So like, even that, like those kind of moments, it's so hard for me to be like, okay, like this character's made mistakes, and I accept them, and I'm gonna watch as she learns from them. She doesn't seem to learn from these mistakes, and she even is like complimented by Elrond for like he apologizes to her for getting her like an honorary award for her duty and getting her to go to the Undying Lands. So like, he apologizes to her for that, and I'm like, wait a minute, I thought that was good, and I'm so confused. Why would we apologize? Elrond, you didn't do anything wrong. So
I think he did know that Gil-galad was trying to get rid of her, though.
Well, yeah, I think Gil-galad said it to him.
Yeah,
I think he's even like, I mean, I'm gonna paraphrase, but he's like, she's a loose cannon. We can't have her roaming around causing trouble for us. So, we're gonna give her an award and ship her out of here. So sure, he apologized for that, but isn't it a very a prestigious honor that she received? Like,
It is, but it was done. It's like,
this kind of brings us back to the whole, like, are these elves committing suicide?
It's like a lifetime achievement award.
Yeah, but then you have to commit suicide afterwards.
Well, they're kind of, lifetime achievement implies like, okay, your career's over, you should get out of here.
And then she's like, my career's not over while there's orcs that draw breath. I'm going back out there. She and Gimli would get along great. You know what? Speaking of, now we know why he gets 3 hairs.
That's a good point.
She senses the hatred of orcs within him, and it's like, oh, that's my guy right there. But yeah, so let us know in the comments down below. I mean, I guess last thing, which do you prefer? Like if
well, I don't know. I'm gonna have to see how the other seasons play out.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, for me personally, the one thing that this show is lacking is a true Gandalf character. Yeah, we have the Meteor Man or whatever, but he's got so much amnesia that he's not Gandalf. He's just basically a prop at this point. We're missing a true Gandalf character, and so I do kind of want Galadriel to kind of maybe fill that void, or at least start to progress into something that I can rally behind. Because right now, just based on her first season and her decisions in it, I definitely can't prefer her yet. But you're right. I think
because she hasn't developed at all.
No,
she's still a mess. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, she hasn't redeemed herself, but like she hasn't even started to. Like we haven't even seen any other than the one episode right after the volcano.
No, the only like the only part where in the series where she's like vaguely nice is when she's talking to a Isildur on the boat. And
yeah,
maybe with Theo, I don't know.
That's what I was saying. Like with Theo, she's walking in the woods and he is exhibiting some serious hatred towards these orcs, and he's like, I'm gonna take this sword and cut a bunch of. She's like, you gotta let go of that hatred. She starts to like understand that it's not good to hold on to these aspects of herself.
She stops Halbrand from killing Adar, but then she goes ahead and tries to kill Adar.
She stops Halbrand. This is what I was like getting at. She stops Halbrand, and you're like, oh, we're about to see a character turn. And then when they've captured Adar, she goes in and basically is like, I want to commit genocide on all of your people. So like she starts to go down the path, and then she like backtracks massively, and it's like, nope, I'm ending everyone. Not just you, not just these orcs over here, but all of them. I'm finding every single one. And it's like, how are we supposed to ever root for this character? Like, she's basically gonna have to go live with the orcs and like realize that they're good, that they can be good, or that they're at least, if they're left alone, they're not a danger. She has to like somehow experience this, because I just don't see how she comes down from this. It's just so crazy. And now with Halbrand basically like pulling a fast one on her, she's gonna go even darker, and I don't know if she can. Like she's about to realize that the person she's been hunting, like we don't really see her acknowledge it yet, but the person she has been devoting her entire life to hunting was with her the entire time, and she introduced this guy to every person that is now in danger. She has not dealt with that realization yet.
Yeah.
Like that's gonna, like, that should totally break her. Like I don't know where she goes from here. She has to like plunge into some really despair, darkness for that realization. So maybe once we hit that rock bottom, then we can start building on something. Because right now, as much as I like the idea of this rebellious elf, the decisions are just so random that it's hard to really say, oh yeah, I like this character. Let's go. I just there's just something off about how she behaves. But yeah, I like to open it up and see what the people in the comments think, because this one is very interesting, and I'm interested to know if people would like a show that has a Galadriel similar to what we see in the original trilogy, instead of this kind of renegade warrior elf. We would have more of a stately, almost magical wizardly elf. I do wonder what that would look like. Obviously, we would need some other mechanisms to bring in the drama. So, it's I guess it's a harder writing setup for the drama that way. But we would definitely get a much smoother transition between the two. So yeah, leave them in the comments down below and let us know what you think. And we'd love to hear from you guys.
I regret to announce this is the end. I bid you all a very fond farewell.